I'm going to guess lobbyists, like you said, follow the money. I don't think this kind of came out of nowhere. I would agree with you that lawmakers have no idea what they're talking about. That's why this was force-fed to them. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we've got Rob Hendrix. He's a consultant as well as a rec shop owner in Central Washington, visiting us from Cabo in sunny Mexico. Send some sunshine to rainy Seattle, please. Thanks for being with us.
I understand you're getting your load of liquid sunshine.
That's it. Yeah. So I wanted to chat with you because you're a rec shop owner. You understand what's going on in the marketplace, and you're kind of seeing Washington in this petri dish experiment do some funky things as of recently. They want to ban most of concentrates by essentially eliminating it to 10%. Washington, as you know, is crazy. So back in 2017, the state banned gummies because it was enticing or attractive to children. And then fourth quarter 2018, they tried to implement rule changes that would have affected 70% of the edibles market because they wanted to implement changes to the shapes and colors of edibles. Mm-hmm. Fast forward another year, fourth quarter 2019, they banned CBD beverages. And then now they want to essentially ban all concentrates. And so, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any advice on how to prepare for a volatile regulatory environment? You just tuck and roll? What, I mean,
well, there's so many things that are not being, like I told you, like I suggested to you before we actually went live here. I don't trust the legislators who are putting these bills forward to understand what it is that they're talking about. The 10%, the serving size, the potency. I don't trust them, number one, to understand what it is that they're really talking about. But let's talk about what they do understand theoretically, and that is the effect on businesses and businesses' employees. This is going to create a bunch of hardship across the state of Washington. The concentrates, wax, shatter, whatever you want to call it, the concentrates market has been allowed to grow, to flourish under 502. There are business models that have been created, investments that have been made, big investments that have been made. The entrepreneurial spirit's alive and well, like we talked about, and more purity, more and more efficiency in the creation of these concentrates. And therefore, as the market's grown, and you'll see figures anywhere, depending on the shop, I don't think it's 40% in our shop, but across Washington state, this proposed ban would affect up to 40% of the market of the average retail store across the state. Now, it's kind of hard to kind of picture that, but nevertheless, it's going to be a substantial hit insofar as variety to consumers, customers, and they should care about consumers and customers. They should care about the medical folks, and I'll get back to that. But they're not really thinking about the unintended consequences. And regardless of the definition of concentrate and THC and dosage and all these things that I don't believe they know what they're talking about, they do understand the effect of businesses being shuttered and employees being laid off. And that's going to be a big deal. And I don't know if that's being taken into consideration. Who's arguing, who's advocating for these folks who maybe just picked up and moved and started a new job at a business in Burien, for example, your hometown. I believe it's an extension of the vaping crisis. And I don't know if you can see me, but I'm putting my fingers together, the crises. Like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste, something like that, whatever he said. I just see this as an extension of the optics and the politics being mixed, and that's rarely a good combination.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting with concentrates at 10%. You're going to lose a lot of that market a lot of market share to the black market, or anyone who's near Portland, Oregon is going to go to there. We're seeing it at the borders of Idaho for both Oregon and Washington. A lot of sales are going to Idaho residents. That's exactly what's going to happen here. No one's going to buy a concentrate when it's diluted and watered down. So some of those companies that's their only product line, their only SKU, they're going to struggle to try to even survive if that's implemented for 5 months that we saw the vaping ban in Massachusetts, for example, or Oregon's 4-month ban.
It strikes me, Josh. It strikes me a little bit like, and not to get into another controversial topic, but I know that some of the thinking with this is, why do we need, first of all, I saw an article that indicated, why do we need 100% THC in these concentrates? Well, there's no such thing as 100%. Okay, that's impossible. I don't even believe the 90% necessarily that you see sometimes at the upper end of the THC scale. But to me, it strikes me a little bit like, why do people, as far as the Second Amendment, why do people need cannons? Why do people need AR-15s? Why do they need these big magazines? The same people might be thinking, why do we need something so strong, so potent? Okay, I will give you one example. I have a very dear friend who has recently gotten out of the cannabis business, but he's afflicted with multiple sclerosis. And he treats his MS exclusively with cannabis and cannabis-related products. And 95% of how he treats his MS is with high THC concentrates. He is able to drive a car, drive a motorcycle. He skis. You would have no idea that he's got MS. Now, again, that's kind of an isolated example, and it could be, I'm sure people that might hear me say something like, well, yeah, but he's actually not taking any other drugs, no Western medicine whatsoever to deal with his MS. He's doing it exclusively, but he's not alone. And that's just one example. Sometimes you have to have something pretty potent to deal with something that's pretty serious. And in his case, he's a relatively young man. He's in his early 40s, otherwise healthy, strong. And this is how he's dealing with his MS. And he's a completely functioning member of society with no limitations, no inhibitions whatsoever. And again, you know, are we looking at the big picture? Are we just kind of focused on the optics that suit our political agenda? That would be my question.
Is definitely deteriorating the medical availability. Concentrates were kind of one of the last products. I don't have edibles. I don't go out and buy edibles because Washington State has a cap at 100 at 10 milligram servings, and 100 milligrams isn't really going to do a lot for me. I need 200, maybe 300, and I'm just not going to spend the price on that. And
right.
So, you know, RSO, Rick Simpson oil, was a decent alternative, or a concentrate. So once they start like peeling that away, you have less and less opportunities for these medical patients. It's unfortunate. So the medical patients lose, these small businesses are losing, and all of them, actually, all of the successful companies include concentrates, because like you said, it's at least 40% of the market. It's a huge percentage. I think joints are the number one SKU, but in terms of a category, concentrates are killing it.
Well, and I mentioned wax and shatter, but we also have to include cartridges, you know, in that mix as well. Now that is a big part of our market. The problem is, you know, again, a person might say, well, you know, if it's not available to anybody in 502, any of these concentrates that we're talking about banning, then everybody will just have to buy flower, pre-rolls, edibles, like you say, whatever the case may be. Well, it's not that simple. I am concerned about the effect on my store. I don't want to lose any customers for any reason. I don't want to have products being taken off my shelf by the state government. I think the market needs to decide. I need to decide. My customers need to decide what we have on the shelf. But the other side of the equation is, these folks are not necessarily just going to switch and go with what the state says that they have to choose from. They will go out and find it in a black market. And then what happens from a purity standpoint, from a cleanliness standpoint? Now we're out there where people aren't tested, and we get into this whole argument, this whole black market for concentrates. Don't think that doesn't exist. It does exist. Now, 20 years ago, maybe it didn't. I don't know. You think of black market and you think of 502, you think of flower, you think of weed, pot, you know, whatever you want to call it. But this industry in Washington State, under the tutelage and guidance of, indirectly, the executive branch of the state of Washington, the various legislative committees that work with the LCB, and the LCB themselves passing down rules designed to adhere to laws that are put before them, this market has been created. So how do you all of a sudden decide, oops, never mind, we don't want to do this anymore? There's infrastructure, there's huge investments, there's people, and they're, you know, it's funny. I think the state of Washington, they're I know that they think that they need to take care of us because we can't take care of ourselves, right? But what about the simple choice for consumers? Consumers, regardless of capitalism, regardless of that, the state government should be concerned about customers' choices, citizens having choices, and they're starting to pull back, and I just think it's totally wrong. I don't know what the motivation is, but I would challenge you and other journalists, to follow the money. Who is being hurt by the continuance of the sale of these products? Who's going to be benefited by the cessation?
Well, that was going to be my next question, because when I had you on the podcast last year, we were talking about the vape crisis and how that was going to impact sales. You had mentioned that you saw, I think, an increase in sales as people were kind of getting in before there was a complete ban, trying to buy what they could. Where do you kind of foresee sales going with concentrates? Do you think people will start to hoard this in anticipation of some kind of ban? Or do you think some companies will go out of business as they try to just throw in the towel? I don't even know. What's your expectation?
Well, I would think that it makes total sense for people to kind of buy up, store up, because this stuff's not really going to go bad. I mean, it's got a shelf life that's pretty extensive. It's not like flour that's gonna, no matter how well it's packaged, it's gonna dry out over time. It's gonna get kind of crispy and burn up in a second. Some of the stuff that we're talking about, some of the products that we're talking about, they have a pretty extended shelf life. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some quote unquote hoarding. As far as long term, if in fact this ban goes into effect, then you're going to see some businesses scrambling in a hurry, and they may not be able to scramble. They may be so locked in and so dialed in. When you get efficiencies of scale, when you get economies of scale, it's usually because people have gotten big and they've gotten specialized and they've gotten real good at what they're doing. Well, if some of these folks are getting better and better and more dialed in all the time, it's going to be more and more difficult for them to all of a sudden, oh, we can't do that? Okay, well, we'll go back over here to our business model prior to our processing concentrates, wax and shatter, et cetera, et cetera. I think the further down, we're quite a ways down this pipeline. We're 5.5 years into 502. Why are we still monkeying with this system? Why are we going backward? Why are we reducing choice, reducing opportunities? Why are we creating an environment that's not allowing for, controlled, I understand that, growth? They've been at this with us since day one. Nobody has produced a 502 concentrate. Nobody has produced a 502 cartridge without the encouragement even of the LCB, and by extension, therefore, our state government. There's no penalty for the politicians to pay. There's no skin in the game for the politicians. There's no skin in the game for the state government, for the LCB, for the excise taxes that are collected. There's no penalty for them. They don't lose. These legislators don't lose their job. It doesn't impact their paychecks and their life, but they are drastically. And I think we need to hear more from the folks that are going to be directly affected. In Washington State, as we plainly know, I can't even have $1 invested in anything on the wholesale side. So I only can buy what is given to me in the 502 pipeline. So I'm gonna be at a disadvantage, but it's gonna be at a disadvantage that's even and fair with the other 502 stores. They can't get stuff I can't get. None of us are gonna be able to get it. But these businesses that have marched down this road of economies of scale and efficiency and creativity and purity and quality of product, I think they're really extended right now. And I think this is just going to cut them off. And I don't see a lot of them being able to adapt. I think it's going to be, adapt or die. I think most of them are going to die. I don't see another way.
Some of the competition in North Seattle by Everett is some of the most competitive markets, anywhere. And so we're seeing shared parking lots. And if those companies are selling primarily concentrates and they're not getting that revenue, then that's just another systemic issue from the producers to the retailers to medical patients. Everyone kind of suffers when some draconian law comes in for whatever reason. I'm going to guess lobbyists, like you said, follow the money. I don't think this kind of came out of nowhere. I would agree with you that lawmakers have no idea what they're talking about. That's why this was force-fed to them. I don't know why. We'll just figure it out later.
Yeah. We need to. The optics are right. The political atmosphere is such. We need to act. Well, acting is fine. Overreacting is not good. Reacting is good. You'd rather, it's so much better to anticipate trouble coming down the pipe than it is to deal with it once you've got it. This is a gross example of the Washington state legislators and the LCB. Potentially, they haven't made the move yet. They haven't made the ban. So let's give them a little.
The damage
credit.
is done though, because they just came out with a report that came from industry insiders complaining about being strong-handed, heavy-handed in the industry, and so them kind of having a policy shift to not be so heavy-handed. And you come right back at this where it comes out of nowhere. We were talking offline about a point system that basically incentivizes unions, and that coming from an interested party, an $88 million acquisition in the state. So don't know where it's coming from, but I don't know. Maybe we'll just have to come back to the Talking Hedge and find out. But I want to thank my guest, Rob Hendrix, consultant, rec shop owner. Appreciate you visiting us from Cabo, sunny Mexico. Thanks again, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Appreciate the time.
I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.